maybe Benet, we can start with you. Please introduce, who are you, who do you work for, and what do you do?
Does this work? Yeah. I'm Binay Anand, and I work for Shell. I'm lead architecture for chemicals and products.
My name is Ed Moore. I'm an operational technology strategist and distinguished engineer for Chevron.
I'm Matt Grant. I'm a program manager with the Unity Architecture, Engineering, and Construction Solutions team, so like the non-gaming side of Unity.
Hello everyone, I'm Manoj Tharwadkar. I work for Dow. My role is in the Operations IT/OT Technology Center. I'm a senior IT architecture manager responsible for setting a strategy for data and workflow integration and using policies for data standards. I work with other architects to make sure our data and workflow integration is across the whole digital thread for our asset lifecycle to optimize the performance.
Hi, my name is Jan Shoemate. I'm with Eastman. I lead our Worldwide Engineering and Construction Solutions organization, and I'm also the director of our Corporate Manufacturing Automation Transformation organization, and have the privilege of serving as the co-chair of the steering committee for the CFOS Standards Group.
Thanks, Jan. And Michael, maybe because you've already had a chance to speak, we already know you. Let's give the rest of the working committee and the other panelists the ability to reflect on your presentation and your thoughts. So Benet, you're here. This is the second day or so event where you get to talk about this. So why is this important to you?
So Michael already covered a lot of things there, and we echoed what he said about a few items. One of the item is we need to separate data, software, and platform. That's important, very important for us. Second one is interoperability. Interoperability from the asset point of view, not like from the other view where, yeah, my data can work in there, but you will lose intelligence if you are not really, really transferable. So what we need is basically an ecosystem where the data that is generated is not dependent on particular software. That data can be seen and worked and changed in any system without manipulation. So that is what we want. A lot of people can say it may be already there, maybe, but we don't see that. Right now, the design and engineering where we operate, and also the maintenance there, we don't see that. One more item that we are very important, we are working on, and we are working together is standardization of the data. Like CFOS representation is here. We are working with other standards. What we want is in our company and in other companies also, there are a lot of models, data models. We call it hey, some people say we don't have a standard. Actually, we have hundreds of standards. What we want is we want an industry standard. One is this industry standard. In our previous talk, what we have seen is car. I have a car, everyone has a car, and we want a tire. They can just go and Google it and they will get the right tire, right bolt, right everything, because it's made on a standard. Come to the process industry, we don't have that. We have Shell standard. Within Shell, we have different standards. Exxon has the same things. Everyone has the same thing. What we want is we want to go towards the industry standard where we can say that, all right, I want to build this plant. What standard to use it? Take this standard. And this standard, that's where we are working on. And we want a cooperation from the whole industry, suppliers, and ecosystem to come up with that standard and not stick with it's a hard and fast this. It should be enough, the space should be enough there that we call it an industry standard. There might be gaps, there might be something. We have been working with that. We have collaborated with a couple of universities. We are working in a very fast pace that we think, but we need some support from the supplier groups. And that's why we are here. We are here for taking this vision of digital twin. That doesn't depend on a tool. It should be tool agnostic, interoperability, standard data. That's where we are. Standard data means standard reference data. So I don't want to say that, hey, the design data should be the same. Design data can be different. It's the reference data that we are working on. Thank you.
Okay, all right, so thanks, Vinay. So maybe let's have a bit of a discussion about standards. And I know, Jan, you and I have discussed before about your role in CFOS. CFOS is doing some things in this area. So how do you see from a CFOS perspective working with digital twins?
Well, to the point just made, interoperability is very important to us at Eastman, and agnostic views of the different softwares to come together to provide a holistic digital twin. So CFOS, it's an acronym, Capital Facility Information Handover Specification, provides a nomenclature and a data structure that is standardized. Everyone here on the panel, all of their companies, with the exception of Unity, we're working on that, and many of you in the audience, your companies are members of the organization. There's MOUs across with other standards bodies. CFOS has 9 MOUs in place, DEXB, Mimosa, Namur, currently putting one in place with CII. So I think that there's good interoperability from that standpoint amongst the standards organizations. To provide that nomenclature, that base language. I saw a story on TV the other day about the first printing press, and that's amazing in itself that there was a printing press, and we can now, hopefully we're all reading a tablet now, so this is ancient history. But the fact that an A looked like an A every time, that the A's didn't look different depending on who scripted them. To me, that's one of the most important things about the standards and something that CFOS offers. When you're talking about a pump, there's a standard nomenclature, and I have a language that is consistent every time that vendors can then use, suppliers can use to create their software around. As an owner-operator, it is one thing to create a project from a greenfield perspective. If I use that standard nomenclature and I build a digital twin initially, I now run into a problem when I hand off to operations and maintenance, or if operations and maintenance is creating their own view. Unless we have that structure and that synergy between our nomenclature, we can't even talk to ourselves internally. So to me, that's a very important item to be successful, to have that standard base that provides that common language and that common nomenclature that we can all talk about the system and share attributes across.
Thanks, Jan. All right, let's shift gears a little bit, and we'll certainly take questions from the attendees today. Matt, we want to hear a little bit from you. So you and I in the past have talked about the 3D assets, and you come from the gaming industry, right? And leveraging and reusing 3D assets across multiple use cases, and you've got experience with ecosystem. Can you share any experience there?
Yeah, I mean, we hear quite often from clients where they're like, I'm using a vendor and it does solution X, and I really wish it would do solution Y. And I would love to use Unity to live on top of it to deliver that. But the problem is the data that I need to do that is locked into a proprietary platform, you know, and it's unusable. It's basically held hostage in that respect. And, you know, I get why that is, but it does beget that challenge of like, if you can't, you know, decouple the data from that solution, then it's very limited in its extensibility. And, you know, that becomes a problem. We wish we could do a lot more with it. The ethos, you know, that we're moving towards is that I can demonstrate how a 3D asset can be reused across multiple different use cases. A LiDAR scan of a facility that I might do for the purpose of, you know, maintenance planning can be reused to do a VR training example, you know, for safety or that kind of thing. And so in a perfect world, we would have that level of interoperability and we would all freely exchange information. But I think, that, you know, as we're thinking about digital transformation, there's a bit of a changing of the guard going on where you can't really design solutions around a capture the flag mentality anymore. They have to be inherently designed to be open and extensible, or else you're just going to get stuck, you know?
Okay, thanks, Matt. Okay, Manoj. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, let's go back to data. So beforehand, you and I had chatted a little bit about the reuse of data and data federation. What does all of this mean to you?
Yeah, so you know, we are all in our digital transformation journey, right? And that makes data at the center of it. We want to improve the quality of the data, right? We have, you know, interoperability is there. Everybody is trying to use data, but it's costing us a lot. Engineers, like, we want to improve the asset reliability, we want to keep the data synchronized, but there's a lot of effort wasted in making sure that the quality of the data is good, because the data needs to be updated. So that's where it's very important for us to make sure the data is federated. Or what I mean by that is we should keep the data at the system of record. Whoever owns the data, whatever system is owning the data, you keep it there. You make sure that it's used multiple times in the way that anybody can update it, and the updates need to go immediately back to the system of record. And that would allow us to interoperate, plug and play between all the systems, get the best system that's there for that particular function, right? And that way, we can make sure that the digital thread, everybody is working together. So we are all doing it, but we are doing it individually, trying to close the gap. But as an industry, if we work together and make sure all the suppliers and vendors help us, we can have everybody benefit and we can keep the cost down.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Vinay, you feel free to jump in anytime.
Yeah.
That's the rules, right?
So, like, one addition that what we want is basically federation of data. So we want to go through the single source of data. So if we have a solution which is integrated properly, we don't have to recreate the data. So data is there somewhere. We want to reuse the data as in federation, so that data remains there. I don't want the data to be moving around. Data remain there, federate in the other system so that we can use it properly with a single source. Thank you.
Okay, all right, so we haven't heard from Ed yet. So Ed, you worked with Chevron, you've done lots of different things. Ed, I know you've sold software in the past, so maybe can you give a perspective on what does Chevron think about the value? Because I think at the end of the day, Michael discussed value for the industry, the industrial metaverse, and the value comes with that. What's your view on that?
Yeah, so from a Chevron perspective, as we look forward into the future, right? I mean, let's go 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, whatever that future state is. At some point, we are going to have an open architecture, an open data set out there. It's just how fast we can get there. As Chevron, we don't want to bet on a single vendor to supply the whole spectrum, especially when you look at digital twin. If you look at all the opportunities, it's about the integration of all of these various data sources from design and operations and engineering. That's where the value comes. If we're going to put these smart AI systems like ChatGPT or other open AI systems on top of it, it's going to have some system to go to and pull all this data from to be able to make these informed decisions and conversations. So as a vendor, I would suggest, unless you think you can win, so the capture of the flag analogy I thought was good, if you want to play that one game and think you can own the industry for the entire digital twin space, good luck. Right? I think it's more of a question of how do you get to the point, and the smaller companies are going to have to go this way because they can't own that big data infrastructure, right? So think about that and think about how do we get there as an industry, and how do we, enable companies to basically innovate and bring their systems and keep this kind of, as you were saying, federated data set out there that we can all work off of. And the technologies are getting there. If you were to ask me, could we have done this 5 years ago? No. Today, I can put all of Chevron's data in an Azure cloud or an Amazon cloud and basically get access to it fairly quickly. And some of this is sub-second. So that's the one thing I would say to the vendors is think about the future and where we're going, because we're going to go there. It's just a question of how long it's going to take us. And if you help us, we'll get there quicker.
Thanks, Ed. All right. So before we turn to the audience, because there are some folks I know that have something to say about this. Michael, you haven't had a chance to speak yet. Do you have any reflections?
No, I think I've said quite a bit. I mean, I think it's an industry, and from a standpoint of, we've heard about the metaverse, the multiverse of suppliers to build the ecosystem is a place where I really think we need to continue to advocate.
Okay. So
Peter, before you go to the audience, CFOS did send me, if you really latched onto that standards organization. So everybody loves freebies. I do have freebies from the CFOS organization. We've been able to release 6 versions of the standard over the last 6 years. The latest version is free and available to anyone who has access to the internet. So version 1.5 is available, Google CFOS standard, and you can access that. Our chair of the steering committee, Aaron Jones from Exxon, is here as well, and Jake Gleason, who's a member from Chevron, so they can certainly help with that as well. But free standard for everyone.
Thanks, Jan, yeah.
That's
Okay.
great.
So remember the rules, panelists. So the moderator can ask a question. You can phone a friend or somebody that's out there, right? Or if you want to add on to it, you can certainly do that. But right now, I know there's this Tim Walden, Lockheed Martin. I know you're sitting right there. Do we have a microphone, Mark, for Tim? Maybe Tim, if you could just introduce yourself and share your thoughts about open asset digital twins. We got a dead battery?
Hello? Hello?
Yeah.
That was almost like fate
Yeah.
telling me to.
Yeah, please stand, Tim.
Oh, okay. So,
Thank you.
hi, Tim Walden. I'm Lockheed Martin. I'm chief engineer for our digital transformation, and there's so many parallels here. Obviously, I'm sort of the odd man out here amongst this audience. So we obviously, our factories are different, our products are different, but a lot of the concerns are very similar. I mean, from an aspect of instrumenting our factories, we're down that journey, and we are taking pictures, so I can call it a journey if you were in that session earlier this morning. And it's hard. So, everything from, the autoclaves, the CNC machines, and all the stuff in our production lines that we need to instrument. And we've made some progress on that, but it's been painful because a lot of that stuff is old. None of it was standardized for this purpose. And I think the problem we're all dealing with here is that we're using tools that were designed to be very good at what they do, but now they need to exist in a digital thread. So they're not existing alone anymore. They need to be stitched together, and it's that interoperability, that connectivity that's really kind of tripping us up. And so that's where the problems lie in. And like many of you, we don't have the luxury of picking one solution or one vendor for any one thing. And some of that's due to the many customers and domains that we serve. Some of it's the fact that we're a melting pot of companies over the years. But most of it is it's driven by domain or physics. That means that we have to pick up a number of solutions. That being said, the other parallel here is in the products that we actually build, that we also now need to accompany with digital twins for their sustainment and operations for decades of service. And I can tell you the days when we could have proprietary data and proprietary interfaces that connect the components of these systems have passed. The DoD absolutely has zero tolerance for that today. They want open interfaces, at least across the high-level components of a system. And they want those to be published standards. They want to have their ownership or at least their visibility into the data themselves. So I really echo what was stated here many times. This open, interoperable, digitally twin managed future is where we're all going. It is inevitable that we're going to get there. It's much less painful if we get there together. And I would strongly assert that our in aerospace and defense, we have many of the same concerns. And so we have many of the same aspirations of getting standards within the tools and within the data. And I really, separating the data concerns from the software concerns is absolutely critical. It sounds nuanced. It sounds like a system architect yakking, but it's absolutely critical so that we can manage the data, which the tools will come and go. The data is eternal. So I assert, and I've always asserted, I've been in our digital transformation since 2016. It's about four things. It's about people, process, technologies, and data. And those other three come and go, but the data is eternal, and we're all discovering that. And so we really need the data to be interoperable, and I've way over ran the runway here, so I'll stop.
Thanks, Tim.
I really resonate with all the stuff that you're saying.
Okay, so I just want to switch gears again a little bit. So Ralph Rio, okay, so the McKinsey number was 5 trillion, right? So those of you that know that our advisory group, we do market studies. That's how we got started, right? So Ralph, you cover the engineering design tools study, and part of the what we're trying to answer today is what does the future hold? What's in this for the industry and the vendors? But what from a market perspective? What do you think might happen?
Well, Peter was kind enough to give me a heads up that he was going to ask me this question. So I had a few moments to think about it. I'm not nearly as visionary as Peter and Michael are. So I'm going to oversimplify to the point where they may get pissed off at me later on, and we'll resolve that. But essentially, and this is a message to the suppliers, what's in it for you? Essentially, what they're asking is this open asset digital twin group. Digital twins are born in design when they design the plant using your software. So I'm talking to Aviva, Bentley, Hexagon, Siemens. When it's, use to design the plant, after handover, it's handed over to operate and maintain, it dies. The key problem they described to me when we first met a year ago was a digital twin dies. Why? It is not interoperable with the systems used in operate and maintain. So simply that's reliability, maintenance, inspections, laboratory information systems, the engineering systems used by the people who support the plant, all right? It's not interoperable, it's not open to those systems, and it dies. So what would happen if you made your software so it is open? Well, after handover, they would continue to use your software. So there's a revenue opportunity for you there. Instead of it stopping, it would continue. So think about this for a moment. There's 3 years or so to use your software during design and build, right? It dies. If it did not die, they would continue to use that software. Then you have the next part of the plant that has a upgrade. Design that. Instead of the software dying at handover, it would continue to be used, all right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My off-the-cuff estimate, this is easily an opportunity to double your revenues over a few projects, all right? That's the opportunity. And I hope you're not mad at me for oversimplifying.
No, I don't think so. So, yeah, and I don't know what that number is, and I got you started focused on the engineering design tools piece, but of course, digital twins, because I noticed a slight reaction over here about where digital twins are born.
Yes. Yeah, I guess my comment here is this is what I would say is part of our opportunity as an industry is we've got to stop using the language that a digital twin is born when I've built something. That is not a digital twin. That is an engineering tool designed for a specific purpose, right? If we're talking about an ecosystem that I can do, as Matt said, multiple use cases, et cetera, we've got to get our heads around that it's an ecosystem in terms of being able to, you can look up the definition, being able to do multiple activities or value cases or prediction on the same asset. To me, that's one of the paradigms that we've got here. I can go to any OEM, right, that is going to give me a piece of equipment and ask them for their MCAD, expanded equipment drawing. And they'll probably call that a digital twin. Oh, here's the digital twin of your pump or your breaker or whatever. Like, okay, that is an asset, right? It's a hierarchy of an asset. That's not a digital twin, right? You get back to now, if I can use that in multiple activities, I think that's where you'd start getting to where now there's more and more value on that, what I'd say technical debt. That's the only part I would take exception to.
I knew I was in danger of oversimplifying. Michael is right.
No, but I think the point is the market is going to grow. We don't know how much. It might not be $20 trillion. Instead, it might not be 9% year over year, but it could be 18%. So maybe there are more functions that are included in engineering. So Manoj, go ahead.
Yeah, I can add to that. So market will definitely grow because this allows us to take a view of the asset life cycle. Right now, everybody is taking their own view, from the engineering, from the operations and maintenance. But what we are saying is, let's have an open data model for the entire asset lifecycle. So everybody opens up in their data from their software. Plus, we can now start talking about writing software for the data, We want to separate data platforms and software and focus on the data so that you can write more and more applications, similar to the Apple iPhone, right? You start off with a hub, but like you can run as many applications, people can think about it. They can think in terms of writing applications on the data, and they can rely on some things like the data, states of the data. Like right now, we have no way to know what state the asset is, like where it is. Right now it's in design, then it's in construction, then it's in operation and maintenance. But for us, like we are dealing with all of that at the same time. We have assets that are in operations and maintenance, but at the same time, we have some projects going on. We want all of that to be in play and interoperate with each other. So definitely there'll be more opportunities for everybody.
But I think the other caveat, because I agree, the caveat we have got to also embrace is we got to change the way we work, right? We cannot continue to treat the digital asset as the end product, right? If we don't change the work process that uses the capability or the contextualization, the value of the digital twin, as Ralph said, it will come to a very short. I mean, part of the conversation we've had as a group, how many people here still have their phone book in Yellow Pages? Nobody has the yellow book, their phone book, right? I mean, how do you look up somebody's phone number, right? How do you know, and it's one of those things where if you think about a visual way of working, my kids will never know what my father's phone number is. All they know is they click on grandpa's picture, it's going to call them. Go back into your plants in a commodity process like maintenance. Like everything is centered around, you got to have the work order number. Oh, no, give me the asset register. No, I got to have all. Like we have got to change our mindset around how you can use the contextual visualization as part of the work process. And I apologize, this is a dialogue I've had with our group here, is that, humbly within ExxonMobil, if Amazon's out here, ExxonMobil is going to step into the package delivery service, right? I'm kidding, but I'm just saying that in our industry, if I were to go do that, I would go generate a 4-week resource balance, et cetera, and hand it to the truck driver saying, go find your stuff into the warehouse, right? And then what I would do is I'd probably send a car to follow the truck to make sure that the truck that was delivering it was optimized in where he's going. And then after the driver delivered the package, I'd give them a clipboard of metadata that I'd say, fill out all of this stuff so you can fax it to somebody to enter into a database that we may look at in terms of doing analytics on. And I say that, I wish it were, in jest, but I say that as the commodity, business capability of doing maintenance, a challenge that more of us are alike than different. And if we're going to use technology or use the contextualization to drive change and real change in our business, we've got to change the work process along with the harmonization of that digital asset.
Yeah. Okay, so
Can we get a question from supplier?
I was just going to switch to that, Mark. I think you're all here. You must have formed an opinion one way or another on what is digital asset, or what is the digital twin? What do you think about this for the future? Is it a good idea or is it a bad idea? Well, let's hear from somebody in the audience. Comments or questions, we'll take both. Yeah, just please state your name and company.
Hey guys, Scott Hamilton, I'm with Unity. So I hear what you're saying, and Matt's comments agree with what you are saying, but I feel like, and in my examples, I have to repeat the same thing over and over again, right, to exhaustion sometimes until somebody gets it. A lot of times it's hard for us to realize what this change takes and how it works until you have an example that you can share, right, and then you can assimilate it some. I love that AWS, Amazon delivery example. It's so laughable, and then fortunately it's laughable. That is true. And I equate it sometimes to like the days of cloud migration, right? As we were pushing workloads to the cloud, every day it changed, and it was really difficult. And a lot of infrastructure managers were like, this is mine, I'll keep it on-prem till the day I die. But like today, an infrastructure manager rules the world because of the world-class data centers that they manage and run. Like, is there an example that you guys can think of that allows us to kind of put it in a context that you could share? Or maybe that's food for thought for the future.
Anybody have an idea?
Like since Unity come with the gaming industry, right? So I want I don't play games that much, but like not indoor, I play outdoor. So if we have a lot of platform for the games, right? Xbox, PlayStation, and many more, right? Nintendo Switch, and a lot of things. We go to a store, we see like a lot of games, and my kids buy the priciest game. That works only with one type of platform. That also in a particular version of the platform. We want to get rid of that. We want to get the game and plug it in any of the system, and it should work. That's what we want in the industry.
Okay, all right. Ralph, a question here, yeah. By the way, just curious, a show of hands, who is a technology supplier, vendor, service provider here? Just a show of hands, we're just curious. Okay, all right, thank you.
So I have a question just for those people, which is if there was an industry standard that all of the oil companies said, that's the one we're going to use, and it met all your needs, it had all the data that you needed, and it ran perfectly, would you use that? Or would you still want to protect your own data sets? And so that's kind of a question to you. And I'm hoping the answer is no, you would use that. We're seeing that happening in our subsurface area where that used to be very well protected, and I have friends in that area, but OSDU is starting to break that down quite a bit. And I think we're going to have that in the more of the surface in the area that we're talking about. So I'll pause there and see if anybody, is there the business sense to protect your data sets? Or if you had a data platform just like, you don't build your own operating systems, right? You rely on things like Windows or Amazon or cloud to build your software applications on. If we had that data set, would you build on it?
Anybody like to comment on Ed's question?
There, in the back.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, all right. Hi, my name is Sandra Fabiano. I'm with Yokogawa. And actually, yeah, so we were involved with Mimosa and CFOS, and a little bit of DexP as well. What we found was we were the only OEM, I guess, vendor with CFOS. I'm not sure if anything has changed because unfortunately I've been out of the loop for a little while. But we did do some of that work with Mimosa, and we used ISA data sheets for, in this instance, we were doing like some pressure transmitters, temperature transmitters, and trying to map what we have in our specifications with what was identified with ISA. Not an easy task at all. So I think we need to get together. It's true. We would share the data. We have done that, like I said, with Mimosa. And we would, I think, do the same thing with any organization that's trying to do that and to standardize it. Because there's definitely value to share that so that all that data is yours and can be used for every use case as you've described.
Yokogawa, thank you for stepping forward. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. And I do want to restate, that data is ours, right?
Yes.
We have a lot of companies that want to own our data. We don't like that at all.
Actually, like I have a colleague like Bob, who has been working with Yokogawa and others. Actually, Bob and Robert both. I would like them to state how they have come up with what you call is a tool independent feature that we want to go in the other area of process industry. Bob, can you help us?
Yeah. Bob Whitaker.
Yeah, thanks, Benet. So Bob Whitaker with Shell. I think Peter and Michael both did a very good job in terms of representing a parallel between the open process automation initiative and this proposal. And when I look back on that, I also do very much see the parallel. Shell is actively involved in the open process automation initiative, and the principles of open, interoperable, and et cetera, are resonating really well with me in a larger sense around the digital twin. Now, my knowledge around the digital twin, primarily is in the engineering space, but certainly just even within that, there's a lot of parallel and a lot of value opportunity from my perspective. So, yeah, thanks again, Benet.
Yeah. So maybe just another question. This hasn't come up yet. Matt, you bring an interesting perspective, and certainly having you as part of this industry panel is kind of special because we see you as a potential disruption to the industry. We know you're not part of the engineering, design, tools, market study, but when we've discussed technology in the past, you've mentioned something called digital asset management. So we're always, like Michael says, we're trying to step out of our lane to figure out how others are doing this, whether it's Lockheed Martin. So what is digital asset management, and how are you guys handling data?
Yeah, sure. So in the games world, there's a thing called the Unity Asset Store. And basically means if you're a game creator and you need some, a tree, a car, or a dog, or a sword, there's an asset library where you can retrieve that stuff. Usually it's user-generated content, so there's an entire community of people who are just out there making things, and it's a whole marketplace where you can buy and sell things. And it's not just physical assets like an object you'd use in a game. It's also like particular plugins and shaders and things that are under the hood that people use to actually build game mechanics, physics engines, that kind of thing. And so the basic ethos there is that these utilities are drop and drag. Like you can basically just drag them in as existing code into your projects, and it's very simple to do. And so our vision for industry is sort of like to take that logic and facilitate the same kind of thing. So if I had a LiDAR scan or a CAD model, I can ingest it into my asset store, if you will, and then federate and manage the access to it to whoever wants to use it, and allow people to consume those assets in their projects in the same way. And it's a huge caveat because I think a lot of the metadata and tagging and the ability to connect systems of systems together through that tool becomes super powerful. So that's, I think, like a really nice vision, and it sounds great. But I have to kind of temper the expectation that there are some significant technical challenges that we still face in able to be able to have that level of interoperability. For example, a very dense CAD model of a facility or a crazy point cloud scan comes with an order of magnitude of complexity than bringing a sword into a video game, right? So while I like what Tim said, we're all on the bus together, and I think Michael, you did a great job, and Peter as well, of outlining the situation and the vision. But I don't know how long this bus journey might take. Like, you could be in for a ride. Good news is we're getting there, and it's getting easier as we go. But the ability to kind of realize that vision and make it real tomorrow is probably not quite real. We can do it through brute force, which is just another way of saying it expensively. But ultimately, we want to make it a lot more accessible, and it's going to take a little bit of time.
So let me try to connect the dots. I know Scott had asked the question because I appreciate, Matt, what you said. And this is when we talk about what use cases, right, that are out there. And just to be provocative for the room, somewhere down the road, maybe we won't have our operators and maintenance people with radios, right? Think of a job where you've got to go do maintenance, right? You've got to go build a scaffold, remove insulation, send a pipe fitter out or an instrument tech to do. You got multi-craft type work. Today, think about your work process that you're doing, right? But think about the future where, quite frankly, why can't I drag and drop, after the work has been completed, as soon as the work's been completed, why do I need to tell somebody? Right? I can now represent, these digital assets on an ecosystem or a twin where, quite frankly, aside from doing some sort of ML of was the scaffold built correctly, right, from a visual recognition, but now I have something, an asset that I can use now communicate to the next craft. It goes to somebody else's workflow.
Right.
So you're not worried about people calling back and forth to get work done, but using the asset in the interactive, right, in terms of different components, drives a work process that is inherently more efficient than
Right.
what we're doing today.
And that potentially reduces the margin for error as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So before we only got about seven minutes left. Like I know there were others that had that had thoughts on this. So Jake Gleason from Chevron. I know you're right there. Would you be able to give your perspective on what you've heard? I think we need a mic.
Hi. So yeah, my name is Jake Gleason. I am with Chevron. I was brought here to support Jan and the CFOS effort more than anything else. So I'm going to talk a little bit about standards and the CFOS standard. I think that they're really important. I've worked as an information manager for 14 years on major capital projects for Bechtel. And one of the very difficult things to do was to find the data, right? The owner operators would come and ask us for certain information about pumps or compressors or heat exchangers or whatever it was, and it was always different. And even then, we didn't always know exactly what they were asking for. And I'll give you an example. Pressure was always something that was asked for pumps. So I would go and I'd say, okay, they're asking for pressure. And I'd go back to my mechanical engineers and they're like, well, do they want design pressure? Do they want operating pressure? Do they want maximum allowable working pressure? Which pressure do they want? So we go back and forth and back and forth. And it took usually about a year for us to figure out exactly what it is that the owner operator was asking and where I could go get it in my EPC systems to deliver it to them. So the standards are very important. It eliminates a lot of that back and forth. Those issues that you would have in that time and that waste of time and getting the incorrect information or not getting the information that you want. So that's why we're very big supporters of CFOS. We here at Chevron are adopting it now. It's finally at version 1.5. We went through a year-long process of adopting it and making it part of our enterprise class library. So we're on that journey right now as we speak. One of the other things that the standard enables too, and you guys keep referring to the data is really important. So one of the things that IOGP did a couple of years ago, I was the chair of a task force that was exploring the concept of a global equipment hub, which is having the OEMs go and publish their data and documents based on the CFOS standard to a cloud-based repository. Now, in my experience, about 40 to 60% of all the information that we needed to load into our maintenance management systems comes from the original equipment manufacturers. So think about that. Every time, we have 50 projects in our portfolio. They have similar project portfolios as well. We all buy the same pumps from Flowserve. We all buy the same transmitters from Rosemont. We all basically want the same information, but we ask for the same information over and over and over and over again. And every time we have that information, every time we ask for it, there's a transaction cost that's associated with it. So the idea behind the Global Equipment Hub that IOGP was sponsoring in JIP 36 was that we build a cloud-based repository, have the OEMs publish their information based on the same standard that we're all asking for in one location, and then we just go consume the information on an as-needed basis, right? So we're about to pilot this as well. So that's being sponsored by the JIP 33 team, actually, I think, not JIP 36, but it is based on the JIP 36 or the CFOS standard. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on standards. I think they're very important. I think they drive efficiency and they help us get the information that we actually need to put into our operations and maintenance systems, into our digital twins and whatever it is. So.
Okay, thank you, yeah. Any other comments? Final questions before we're gonna wrap up?
So I do want to make a comment, and I do agree in terms of standards will be the accelerator for the adoption. But I also will be clear is that we don't need to wait for standards to move from where we are today, right? Because I think from a standpoint, there is an opportunity for us to grow in terms of the ecosystem, and absolutely standards will be a massive accelerator, but I think as an industry, should not have the premise that we need to wait for standards before we move forward towards this vision.
I also think there's an 80-20 rule there, having the 20% that gets us the 80% of the value. So CFOS is not what it's going to look like 20 years from now, but it's out there and I can use it today. And I'm picking on CFOS because that's why I'm here, but several of those partner organizations, there's something there that we can use and we can start building upon that language. So I agree with Michael's comment, but there is a base foundation there that we can start using to get 80% of the good.
Any other comments, sir?
And also, we have, there are standards already exist, right? That they may be improved, but even the same thing applies to the standards. They all need to work together. So there's no need to invent new standards if you can work together with, we have things for the in operations and maintenance side, and then you combine that with the engineering side. And what is important is we want everybody to open up their data, and in your software allow us to do the mapping, right? Like this, like if you support a standard, that's good, and then we can close the gap by, we can map what's required. But it needs to, we need to start using it and get value from it, because we are already spending a lot of time doing it ourselves.
Any other comments on the standards? Okay. Oh, Benet, go ahead.
I have one small comment that actually the train has left. It was going to happen. I want everyone to jump on that train. Think about it. How do you want to progress with us? How do you want to partner with us? And I'm sure like ARC is going to help us on board. And please come up. Like I'm especially requesting like EPCs and supplier community to come work with us, give us suggestions. Where do we take that? It is bound to happen. It may take like what somebody said that it may take like a few more years. It will be faster if we work together. Thank you.
Thanks, Benet. That was a perfect lead into the next step, and that is, what do we do next? Where do we take this? We've had last June, we've got today. Ed, let's start with you. What's next?
Well, I mean, I think that the next thing for us as a working group around digital twins, we have to be very clear about what we're asking our vendors to do, right? And so I think that's something we're undertaking right now, and then hopefully the vendors will come forward and participate in those activities. I think the big question is if the vendors choose not to try to help us go down this path, then that'll tell us a lot, and we'll choose different vendors more than likely.
Matt, comments?
Make sure we don't think about tech in a vacuum. And by that, I mean, the tech is only as good as the end user. So really need to double click on that and make sure that the people that are going to be the end users of these solutions are truly benefiting from them.
Okay. What about you, Manoj? What's next?
Yeah, let's all work together, show interest, look at the reports that we have. We have identified, the working group has identified the use cases and some requirements. Show interest and get engaged, and we can take it from there.
Okay. Jan?
I think get involved is very important. So again, for CFOS, we represent owner operators, we represent EPCs, OEM suppliers, and all of those groups come together. So the comment from Yokogawa, that is the area we're like. We don't have a lot of OEM suppliers. We do have EPCs. We have software companies represented very, very well, and owner operators. But to get more of those suppliers involved, and the neat little secret is we're not just talking about the standard, my relationship with Jake and with Aaron and that team. We're talking about digital twins. We're talking about common ground that we want to solve with the standard. So it's a great way to get involved and think about how to move the needle for the industry.
And Michael, final comments?
Yeah, again, thank you, for the opportunity to kind of share a little bit of the vision of where I believe as an industry we need to go. I think as we work together, one of the things I would encourage everybody in the room is make sure you've done similar touch points that, I have done as outside our industry. Because, as we've heard from the Defense Department, there's a number of these problems that other industries have already solved. And I think it's an area where we need to quickly learn from those activities and not think that oil and gas needs to reinvent the wheel. And it is going to be an opportunity for us to get together, talk about, I think, Ed, to your point, what are the pinch points that are going to help us move further along? And then lastly, as we continue to promote standards, we do need to focus around, do we actually follow standards, right? And the following of the standards gets back to, have we thought about what I would say is the commodity business capability work processes, and make sure that we are not trying to put the onus on the technicians and people in the field to feed what I would say is the digital twin. We have got to make sure that is part of the work process, right? And that to me is where we can talk about sustainable assets that continue to deliver value over and over again.
Thank you. Right. So the very last point, and Mark Luce, Client Services Manager for ARC.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure we've scanned your badges here, right? So Mark, what's next from ARC's point of view?
Yeah, so everyone, if you're interested in learning more about this and getting involved, I'm going to ask you to reach out to me and also my colleague, Paul Steinitz over there. So either whether you're a supplier or EPC or another asset owner of another company, doesn't matter what industry, please feel free to reach out to both of us. And again, Peter, thank you very much in the panel for this delightful discussion. And as you know, there's buses coming at 6:15 to go to Discovery Cove. The buses will be over here right by the...
But we're only talking
right
about
here.
digital twins there, right?
Yeah, we'll be talking about digital twins over a few beers, okay?
Okay,
All right, and cocktails and some good food, okay?
All right.
So I want to thank everybody here for your participation and
Yeah.
have a good time
Please
tonight.
thank the panelists. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.